Hey y'all, welcome to the Standing on Business podcast, where ambition meets action. From career moves to life lessons,
our podcast is dedicated to supporting you as you navigate both the personal and professional growth journey.
Ultimately giving you the confidence to always stand in your truth.
Hey y'all, welcome back. I'm your co-host Bianca.
And I'm your co-host Amari.
And you're listening to another episode of Standing on Business podcast. We're so excited to be back with y'all today. Today, we're going to be diving into something that we both feel very strongly about. And we're going to talk about healthy disruption in corporate spaces.
Oh, yes.
So this is about to be a very interesting topic, but, you know, healthy disruption is definitely about shaking up the status quo to build something better. So it's not always, it could be both positive and negative. And, you know, it's just me and Amari today, so no guests. And we want to talk about how you could bring healthy disruption to your workplace.
Yes. I think, Bianca, you said it best by saying, we want to be able to delve into both the positive and the negative, pieces of disruption, because it's not just change for the sake of it. It's about being intentional and impactful, and innovative. And so I feel like all of those things help to drive greater perspective and purpose and just overall greatness. And so with that, I think maybe we should probably get into our first segment.
Yes, let's get started. Let's talk about the basics. We staying on business. We are about starting with foundation. And so what do we mean by healthy disruption? I would say, for me, it's about challenging the way things have always been in the workplace, in your personal life, any type of, but we're going to stick with the business today. But
we can take it a whole lot of ways and flip it and reverse it and remix it. Yeah, but we're going to keep it on topic today.
Yes. But also in a way that creates growth and development.
Yeah.
And I feel like that's something important to both of us. So just like from the start of our careers to where we are now, we really want to focus on growth and development. And, we've had both lots of experiences with healthy disruption and everything from technology to, just the culture. So we'll dive into a little bit of all those things. But I would say just one thing that comes off the top for me of just like something that was like a healthy disruption in the workplace was when we switched our basically our communication system. So we went from WebEx, which I don't know if many of you even know what that is, but it was a very old system, to going to Zoom, which we all use now. So even I wish I would have bought stock in Zoom, as many people, use Zoom all over. But in just being a fellow at the time and just seeing how disruptive that was, but in a positive way, right? Mm-hmm. I saw that okay, there needs to be there's always going to be a systemic change sometimes, and it is for the better at times also. So Amari, what does that mean to you to be, to healthy disrupt in the corporate space?
Yes, no, I think that's just such an interesting question for me right now, because I won't say recently, it's been a good minute now I've been in my role, but I recently made a pivot from being in operations management and leadership into being in project management and leadership. And so for me, that is what I thought about disruption has changed so much, because I was my own catalyst for my world to change. And so to me, I think in general, it's all about balancing disruption with purpose. And I think
that's good.
As I've gone into, thank you. But yeah, I think as I've gone into my new role, I've grown as a leader because I've been exposed to new experiences, right? And so I think what I've learned through that is that it's super important to have a clear vision of what you want to achieve out of that disruption. So understanding where you fit in the disruption. So are you the conductor and the product that is causing the disruption, or are you, the person that's having to react and build up the new systems and protocols and processes? And so saying all that to say, I think for me in project management, what that has looked like is just really using that understanding of clear vision and purpose to understand how I can better support my teams whenever something requires us to be nimble and agile. And so in the project management space, that's really about benchmarking where you are currently, no matter what the landscape is, right. And then analyzing what gaps need to be filled, who, and in what way, what's the best way, in order for whatever that thing is to be better.
Yeah.
So whatever that thing that's coming in and like rocking your world. And so for me, it's really changed, I think, how I think about life in general, because now I always think about that downstream impact of, what's changing and then what role do I play in the change. And so on the professional side, what that looks like is, I now try to think about who are all of my stakeholders, for a project or, for this new whatever that's coming in. And then how do I rather show up for the people that are going to be impacted, whether that's negative or positive, in a way that is influential in the best way. And so for me, that looks like taking a tempered approach. So it's like, okay, maybe we pilot this new disruption and we set a timeline of, we're going to do this for a quarter. We're going to do this for 3 months. And then, we'll have 2-week check-ins, to see how things are going. We'll do the listening sessions or a round table, or, we'll have checkpoints where we come back to understand everyone's progression with this. But also it's setting them up for success for the change. So like, what does the on-ramp look like? Have I given you the tools to be successful with what's coming on? Like, do you have a tip sheet? Have you been trained, and just kind of bringing all of that together so that people feel supported, even if like maybe I don't even know fully what the answer is. Because I think we talk about this in our like day to day of like perception is reality. And so I kind of take that as well of like, sometimes I don't even know what's going on. But if I'm coming in just saying, hey, I'm willing to help, that perception alone for whoever I'm coming to support is like half the battle sometimes. So
I agree. And I would love what you said about just, you could be on either side of the disruption, right? And I think something that I would love to just like talk to like with listeners, just like, how do you prepare? We've both been through so many different experiences in our career, like preparing in those times of disruption or transition in your corporate space is like, it is I feel like it's the pivotal moments that make your career.
Yeah.
Or whether you're in college, like those are the times where I feel like it's the time to really be aware what's happening and then also like plan, right?
Yeah.
So like, there's, some people, this is a quote, but, there's always opportunity in crisis.
Yeah.
So,
speak on it.
Yeah, there's always opportunity in crisis. And I think especially, in the healthcare setting, like we've seen, we go through so many different ups and downs, but I feel like in those times of transition and disruption, it's been, in the position I've been preparing or plan in ways how I could be helpful, right? To the leaders that I'm working with, to my peer group. I would say just even, we've leaned on each other just with the different, as a fellowship, our different cohorts. And I would say like advice I would give is just making sure, just like you said, being aware of where you are in the disruption, but then also being, wanting to give back and give and see like how, you can really like lean into those people, because at time of transition it's stressful, it's hectic. So it's just like really, like you said, be aware. And so that's just one thing I want to like pull out of that, because like we could talk about where you are, but it's like if you're not trying to plan and be aware at the same time, you may miss the point of like, being like, that might be your greatest like experience in your career. It might be most stressful, but it might be the greatest.
It was the best of times.
Yes,
it was the worst of times.
And we've talked, we got a chance to talk to our mentor Deb and just share our experiences that we've mutually had with her, and just my experience like working with her during the beginning of COVID, which I know we'll get into that in a little bit, but it really did shape like my career, and it was the most stressful time. But like you said, best of times, worst of times, it has made an impact.
Yes, no. And I think another thing maybe to add is, because we're speaking right now from the lens of like having to react to the disruption, right? Or like being the person to support the teams through that challenging time. But sometimes you're the person shaking things up. Or you want to be that person, and I think
if you're the leader,
not even that.
Yeah,
I wouldn't say that, because I think sometimes like if you're more junior to a space, like you're bringing fresh perspectives.
That's a
and
good point.
Yeah, like you're bringing a completely new, fresh mindset to something that has been well-standing and or long-standing, and is pretty developed. And I think one thing for anybody who wants to be an effective disruptor, I think what's important to keep in mind at the forefront is that you want the change that you're trying to charge the lead, to change. You want that to be productive and constructive. And I will say, I think that an effective disruptor is someone who is adaptable. I think that's someone who is strategically minded and is communicative, and is also willing to go above and beyond to ensure that the changes are beneficial, purpose-driven, and well understood. Because essentially, like, if you're just having a gripe about something, or you're like, oh, well, I don't like how this goes, I don't want to do it this way. It's like,
it's the delivery that's important. I feel like you put that in a nice bow of all the characteristics of a healthy disrupting.
I try, because I think, like, for me, I think when I first went into my first manager role, and I was dealing with a bunch of different physicians and clinical staff and like nurses and
different generations too,
so senior, right? Like I'm learning from them day to day. Like there's then it's healthcare. I don't have a BSN. I am not an MD, so it's like I don't. At times, I went into that thinking, maybe I don't have the tools to make certain changes, or maybe I second guess myself of like, maybe this isn't something that could be better or optimized. But like I said, I think when you really are purposeful in, why am I trying to make this change? How is this going to positively impact us? Maybe not in the short term, right? But long term, how is this going to benefit us? And where is my why rooted? It is in my personal connections and beliefs and systems, of like, oh, I just want this to make my life easier, or is this something that as a collective is going to help, the team or, whoever I'm working with be better?
Yeah, I think we should definitely talk more about like our leadership experience and our, management, us being leaders, because I don't think we really have touched on it too much just yet. So I think that would be good.
Yes, no, I agree. So with that, Bianca, you've experienced a variety of different leadership roles, from strategy to operations to community. Like, you've had a bit of it all. So my question that I'd like to ask you is, what do you think visionary looks like when driving disruption?
That's a great question. That's a hard question. But I think visionary leadership is all about innovation and taking calculated risks. Look, we'll pause on that one.
Yeah, let's take a moment, because to your point, there is a difference in like just shooting aimlessly versus like, I have a bullseye in front of me and this is my target. Right. I'm sorry to interrupt you.
No, it's good. And and just like you said, just with dealing with in healthcare, you're dealing multidisciplinary, different generations, like. And I would say when I first became a leader in the community health center space as operations manager, I would say that was, I guess, not my first experience really looking at disruption, but like the first time I'm having all that responsibility, right? As the operations manager. Yeah. So I have all these people looking at me, and we're opening up a new clinic. And we're opening up a new clinic with a new model in the system. So that's already disrupting in a positive way, right? We're getting access in a healthcare desert in North Baton Rouge. And so we were positively disrupting that area, the system. We're expanding in different, parts of the state. But I had to, be that visionary leader to like see what is on the other side of that, right? And really lead my team and like creating a space for them, to feel safe and also lean into that vision, right? Of creating this great community health center where we could deliver the best care to patients.
Yeah. No, I feel that wholeheartedly, because, for me, I was during that time in your life, I was kind of on the other end of the coin where you were standing up more like primary care clinics and not even just primary care, because it was multi-specialty. I was setting up community resources in the land of COVID, both in testing and vaccines. And I agree with you. I think like to that point, I wanted to make sure that my teams were supported because it was ever changing. And we truly were the visionaries because we didn't know what was in front of us with COVID. Right, like we didn't know what was next.
Y'all had a completely new.
It was like
space.
Fully uncharted. And so for me, like to your point, it really resonated when you were like, oh, I've never done this. I've never led. I entered my big girl job in a leadership role. Like my first big girl job. I was coming for a leadership position. I thought I was just going to be a little supervisor or a fellow, not even that. And I ended up getting the supervisor role for community testing and vaccines. And every day was different. Our workflows were changing so quickly. But ultimately, what we did was we would debrief after every day that we had, and then we would huddle in the morning for the next day to just see, like, okay, where are we making these incremental changes and, like, what's working and what's not. And we've talked about this in other episodes of failing fast, but when something didn't work, we were like, okay, yep, nope, leave this on the pot. You know, like, we're going to leave this here and keep cooking with something else. But I also wanted to touch on an experience that I had with, like, negative disruption.
Let's talk about it.
Because disruption can be both positive and I won't even say that it's negative, because I think that that is subjective to the lens in which you're looking at
opportunities or challenges.
Yes, it just depends on how you're looking at the circumstance. But essentially what I'm alluding to is early on in my current role, I'd say like less than 90 days in, my organization went through a nursing strike. And for anyone who doesn't know, in New York, our nurses are unionized. So it was a really big thing. And I was so new to the system, but it was, again, in the theme of it was the best of times, it was the worst of times. It presented me with a lot of great opportunity because I got to see our leadership teams react in ways that I wouldn't normally. And I think I gained a lot of respect for a lot of people that I probably wouldn't have even been in the same room with, you know, had it not been for that instance, because we all really banded together. And, you know, it just, I don't know. It's just, I think in those moments when you go through negative disruption with people, you kind of see what everyone's made of, and you see what everyone is willing to kind of step up to the plate. And
that's that transition period that I was speaking about.
And so... yeah, it was interesting to see it from that lens, because I felt like what helped us be successful during that really hard time was understanding the need for stability for everyone, and then prioritizing open communication, and then maintaining the trust across everyone that was involved in order to, you know, navigate this challenge, and then also come up with solutions. So it ended up being fine. I think we were only on a strike for like a week, which is like that's light years in healthcare. But it was good that we were able to come to, you know, agreed upon negotiating terms for everyone. And now, from what I understand, we have better staff ratios for our nurses. They're, you know, I'm sure
they're doing good.
Yeah, they're better taken care of. But had they not went out on that limb, who knows what that could have looked like, you know? But also, I think our leadership did an amazing job of answering that call of saying, hey, things are not working, you know, the way that they used to. And so now we need to react differently to be able to sustain, you know, our organization, and also just be able to provide care to patients.
No, it sounds like from all the experiences we just named about being like flexible and nimble have been, I feel like, the foundation of the good disruption, right? Or how it turned out well, right? So I definitely want to talk about culture and, you know, just how many companies are still stuck in maybe an outdated hierarchy structure. It really takes a certain approach to successfully adapt change. I feel like we've had those good experiences, but let's talk about, you know, just culture and how maybe an outdated model can put an opportunity for disruption.
Yes. No, I completely agree. And I think that you're so right, Bianca. I think organizational culture is really the foundation, and it can either drive you as a company, or it can derail you, and your ability to be able to keep pace with whatever your current landscape looks like. For instance, I know that there's been, not even like you and I, but like there's been a lot of discourse in general about employee satisfaction and engagement. And it's like, you know,
it's a big one, because they measure, I mean, that is what they're measuring a lot of places off of, from, like you said, hospitals to even businesses, where you're, you know, that's what people are judging you on.
Yeah. And I think both in our lived experiences, the things that have been passed on to us by just like, you know, verbal, you know, communication with people in other industries, you know, we've seen that fostering collaboration and creating agile teams can really help to shift the culture in a positive way. And so I think that's where you place your focus when you're having to think about, okay, what is the organizational culture of where I stand?
Right.
And how do I lean into whatever that is? But also, how do I promote keeping this in a high regard, and how do I do that to where everyone's needs are being met? And not necessarily in the sense of everyone's needs are met all the time and everyone's always happy, but like, what does that look like in an equitable lens?
Right.
Of making sure that everyone has the needs that they need to be met and they're prioritized in a way that is helpful to the general collective.
And I would say, as you were talking about, just really assessing the organizational culture you're in, advice I would always give someone going into like a new job, maybe just a new role is like, do I like this environment? Is this something I want to, long term be in? Mm-hmm. Is something to really ask yourself whenever you are, like I said, going into a new corporate space, whether it's a role or a whole new company.
Yeah, no, and I want to highlight this because I think we kind of quickly went over it. But for anyone who may not know, what Bianca and I are referring to when we keep saying organizational culture and culture and culture, this is not like a Migos song. We are not riding any waves. What we're essentially talking about is just the shared values and beliefs and behaviors that shape people within an organization and how they interact with each other and their approach to work. So it's pretty much like the unwritten rules and practices and attitudes that influence, collaboration and overall workplace dynamics.
Come on, definition.
I'm trying. Yeah, so that was a mouthful to say, but, with us now having a better example of what organizational culture is and wanting to talk about the discussion of healthy disruption, Bianca, I wanted to ask you, technology is such a huge part of that conversation, and you have had a lot of experience with, all of the new models of tech that's coming out. And so I wanted to ask you, how do you see AI and automation reshaping the workplace, and what has your experience been like with that?
That's a great question, because I really do think it's a game changer. Mm-hmm. And the advice I give is please research. Like every day is something new. And I would say, just from my experience working with the digital leadership team, from our IS team to our innovation team, I really got to see firsthand in a corporate setting how, like you said earlier, piloting something first and then expanding it throughout the system. They're doing this with like tech products. Mm-hmm. So I've been able to be on the strategy side and really see, but then also in my everyday life, I do utilize a lot of AI tools really just to, make my work more efficient. So, this is not sponsored, but we want it to be sponsored. But I would definitely tell people, ChatGPT is my best friend. But some other tools I use just to make my life a little bit easier, like Gamma AI. I want a Notion AI just for organizing my life, or I'll probably say my top ones that I use. And if anybody needs to create their own images, Midjourney is another top one that I would suggest. But I would say, it really is, going to streamline many processes, and it's really going to help a lot of people and teams become, more creative, more nimble, and really it's going to affect everything. And it already has, honestly. So it's just like advancing every day.
No, and I'll say for me, I think when it comes to the advancements that are being made in technology, I don't really use it for work, just because I can't.
Yeah.
But in my personal life, I do use it as like an organizational tool, and I feel like it has helped me so much because it's kind of an investment tool. And I got this from you, from something that I think you had heard on a podcast, maybe with Morgan DeBon.
My favorite.
Yes.
Love her. Please come on the podcast one day.
Shameless plug. But essentially it was, you want to invest in things that give you your time back.
Yes, ma'am.
And so I found that AI has really helped me be more productive in other pillars of my life because it's helped me to optimize certain areas by, giving me a schedule or giving me a meal plan, to where it's like, okay, this is so straightforward. I can take this, pick it up, and execute. Mm-hmm. And then it gives me the ability to have more like mental power for the things that like I can't use AI for, or the things that I physically have to do that are like more tangible or real life. So
it's been life changing for me. I love it. You know, I use it every day of my life.
Yes,
Truly.
Yes. No, I definitely agree, Bianca. It has been life changing in a lot of ways, and I think that honestly, that's just a foreshadow to the future. Like, yes. We're gonna keep seeing these changes, and so, you know, I hope that this conversation gave you all some really good practical insights on how to disrupt the right way, because there's a way to do everything. And so, you know, just listen to this, digest it, and if you have questions, feel free to reach out to us. But I guess before we go, Bianca, do you mind just giving us your biggest takeaway for healthy disruption, or any advice you want to leave?
Yes, I would. I would say for me, I would say healthy disruption is a reminder that disruption isn't all about chaos, just like you said. We talked a lot about a good positive disruption. So keep that in mind when you think about disruption. It's really more so about the intentionality, right? And then it's also about seeing what's broken and having the courage to fix it. You know, whether you are in a leadership position or in a leadership position more so by influence. Yeah. So maybe it's not a formal role. And so that even if it means like start from scratch, like.
Yeah, no, exactly. And I think another thing to remember is that healthy disruption is a journey. And so, you know, start small and incremental where you can, be intentional, and stay curious. And so with that, you know.
Yes. I'll close us out.
Yes.
Yes. Thank you all for listening. And please follow us on Instagram on standonbusiness.pod. And please listen to us wherever you listen to your podcasts. Thank you.
Thank y'all for listening. Bye.
Bye.